You're very welcome along to this week's RTÉ Rugby podcast. Last week we were a day late coming to you. This week we're a day early. Ireland playing this Sunday means we're changing our schedule a little bit, but delighted to be joined anyway by Jackman and Jonny Holland this afternoon. Looking back on Saturday's win against England at the Aviva Stadium and ahead to Sunday's trip to Murrayfield where Ireland are taking on Scotland. So to recap, Ireland 27-22 winners at the weekend against England. 4 tries, bonus point win to kickstart the 3-in-a-row Six Nations campaign. Jamieson, Gibson Park, Bundy Aki, Tadhg Beirne and Dan Sheehan with the 4 tries. Ireland were 10-5 down at half-time, but ultimately the scoreline actually probably flatters England a little bit. 2 late tries to get the losing bonus point. Fellas, we've a lot to hit on today, but Bernard, to start with, you were on against the head last night with Donal Lennon and Darren Cave. One thing you spoke about, and we can get in a little bit deeper on it here, is how Ireland's attack looked a little bit more creative on Saturday than it probably had in November. Starting to see a bit more of Andrew Goodman's influence. He's obviously taken on a bigger role in this campaign since Andy Farrell is away. He's kind of looking at the wider attack rather than just maybe some of the strike plays he was doing. Can you talk us through a little bit more of what you were talking about last night?
Yeah, I was really impressed by it, and it needed to be good because obviously our 22 entry efficiency was down. We had 11 22 entries, and we weren't anywhere near as productive in there as we normally were. So we needed to be able to score from further out, and I thought you could see a plan coming together, and it was obviously a plan for how England defended in particular, but there was huge intent to get the ball to Witt, and it helped obviously that England had adapted their defensive approach from what we have seen under Felix Jones. And in November, they were no longer a blitz defence. They were actually very soft on the edges. And before, when we played into that blitz, obviously we used to try and go through it. And in fairness, it was possible to go through it with lots of intricate short passes and footwork. But against them on Saturday, we needed to get the ball into the wider channels as early as possible. And it tested their skill set. And I think, players who haven't been thrown those passes for the provinces did throw them. And James Lowe obviously benefited from it. Bundy Aki, he benefited from a great pass from Prendergast. But there was a desire to be less attritional and to try and run at space. And that space was on the outside. So obviously, the try for Tadhg Beirne was a set piece play, and just the thought process around that was all very logical in terms of where the first ruck was. We obviously had a good set piece, 23 line-out opportunities. I mean, Steve Borthwick must be, in his review of his selection and tactically, to give Ireland 23 line-outs plus take away your defensive line-out options, it has to be an error from my point of view. But Ireland's line-out looked slick. Everyone looked in tune. We exposed Otoje, who was obviously their primary defensive line-out option, and we got him stuck on the ground more often than not. So O'Connell can take a lot of pride and credit from that. Goodman will be up and running now because obviously he's doing team attack and set-piece attack, which is obviously a bigger role. And as Jonny will know, especially as you're starting off, getting a good win early when you've taken on your responsibility or new job just helps everyone settle down. And I liked it because I think against France we're going to have to play.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the other games we can be a bit more reliant on our physical power, but I think there's the fact that part of our game looks to be back towards where it was is a big positive.
Jonny, we all came in with a little bit of nervousness, obviously, off the back of November. And for 30 odd minutes of the first half, that nervousness was definitely still there. There were handling errors. There were some of those issues cropping up from November as well. But it does speak to the team's kind of mentality and their, I suppose, the strength that they have, even with Andy Farrell gone, that at halftime they were able to just regroup, decide we're actually not going to do anything much different in the second half here. It's just going to be about cutting out the errors, being a little bit more accurate, and I suppose just having the faith in their game plan that eventually it would wear England down.
Yeah, the Irish resilience has probably been something that I've been very impressed by. And I say resilience now, like over nearly a 5 year span. It's like I said to someone, I can't remember who it was, that I just have a bit of fear around what England are going to do coming to the Aviva. They've done it before, and I just had a small bit of fear. But then I also probably sat on the fence and qualified it by saying, like, Ireland I've said that once or twice about Ireland, and like across the last World Cup cycle and into this year as well. That's why I say 5 years. I've said it a few
Mm.
times since Andy Farrell took over that attack, or Mike Cat, or whoever we believe was doing it. But I've probably said it a couple of times that this is the one I think they're going to get caught out. And I had that small fear before the weekend. And in the first half, obviously that was qualified too, but they
Mm.
were very, very impressive in the third quarter in particular, and they really kicked on. But I think getting the ball into the wider channels was, if you give James Lowe a one-on-one, obviously, like, it's just that's where you need to get to, and James Gibson Park does that for him quite a bit. Sam Prendergast's passing range with the ball barely cocked and ready to go, he just gets serious whip on that
And
pass.
can I jump in there on the getting width? It was something I wanted to kind of jump in with Bernard on as well, but now that you've both mentioned it, so like we saw for James Lowe getting outside Alex Mitchell and popping into Gibson Park, they got it as well with Bundyaki isolating him out wide where he was taking on Marcus Smith. Would that have been set up in advance, like specifically for this game? Would they have been looking to get that width because they recognised that England were trying to protect the likes of Marcus Smith and Alex Mitchell, pulling them out onto wings? And the follow-up question then is, do you expect Ireland to keep doing that? Like, will Ireland change that approach this weekend potentially, with up against Scotland?
Yeah,
Was
I
was
think
that a specific plan rather for England?
Yeah, I think they did look for some English defenders. Like, they kicked on to Marcus Smith as well, was it? And Mitchell, maybe Mitchell in the backfield. Jack Crowley kicked one
Yeah,
slightly.
Crowley peppered Marcus Smith with kicks when he came on.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's a hard one, Birch. Maybe you have a different opinion, but in the autumn, I was just wondering, is it because Sam Prendergast likes to throw big passes and he's very good at that, And I was wondering, was it personnel, um, or was it the way Ireland are playing? Now, I did think at one stage, was it the end of the second half? Yeah, I was. I felt like they were playing too much in their own half, and there was a couple of long passes in the air, and Lawrence caught Ringrose, I think was it. He caught someone anyway, and I was thinking, we're not finding the answers here. And I thought we were playing across them a bit too much. As much as Bertie were saying, like, definitely getting into wider channels, like, it's situation dependent, and I thought they got caught up with that once or twice, but we obviously saw that they got into their flow. I think they got on an edge with Baird down the edge as well before
Yeah.
Coleman's carry and Marcus Smith getting Simbin. So it's just trying to find that balance. Like, if they are changing their approach, and I think, obviously there's going to be decisions in their review where they say this one isn't the one. Like, it's not that it was wrong. They obviously have a way of playing now, and I do think they're going slightly wider, but surely it is situational, because you don't always get nines taking last man, and you don't always get James Lowe with such a mismatch. But obviously there are many mismatches because he's quite a good attacker when he gets one-on-ones on the edge.
And the quality of the tries specifically, Birch, were really, really reassuring as well. Because I think we've probably become used to Ireland scoring a lot. Like, a lot of their tries are dependent on getting into the 22 and establishing multi-phase, or maybe scoring with a nice line-out play or something like that. But this was, James Lowe's one starts inside his own half where he just gets Alex Mitchell around the edge, pops inside to Gibson Park. Then the one from Tyke Burns' try, I should say, rather, not in his own half, but like just inside the English half. It was a lovely line-out play. Hiding James Lowe in behind Tyke Burn was just beautiful. And then the final one, which was just an incredible try. Like, Dan Sheehan, 10 meters inside his own half. You were pointing it out, like the line of five forwards, he sucks in two defenders. And for Sheehan specifically, like, if an out half had scored, if Sam Prendergast or Jack Crowley had scored that try in Dan Sheehan's place, touching the ball three times in two phases across 65 meters of the pitch, we would be highlighting this as like, oh, this is our out half for the next 10 years. It was just an incredible score.
Yeah, I think Dan Sheehan, we just chat about him for a second. Like, so he
Yeah.
defies logic really, because you know, Sam, Gus McCarthy, just to use two players from the Leinster school system, like, I think anyone who saw them in school said that they're going to be high-end players. And at first, Dan was very good in school, but for some reason, the Leinster Academy didn't see that growth in him. So he ended up having to use the club game to kind of catch their eye again. And I remember speaking to someone in Lansdowne. So when he was in the academy, He just loved playing rugby, and sometimes the academy players at the time, and it's getting a bit better now, but they were starved of club rugby, because they were on um, different blocks in their development program. And like Dan used to be banging the door down saying, I want to play for Lansdowne, I want to play this weekend. Because he saw playing as being the the best part of being a professional rugby player. And so he's always been someone who loved playing. And I think this sounds ridiculous because I'm sure they all love playing, but he plays like he loves playing, if you get me.
Yeah.
And since his comeback from obviously a long time out and just hit the ground running straight away. And he's a superstar. He's a genuine superstar of Irish rugby. That's how good he is. And I think this summer, all going well, he'll do it on the highest stage as a test line. But it's important for people to remember that it wasn't all easy for him. He was doubted. He was doubted as an 18, 19-year-old that he actually had what it takes. And it's hard to figure that out now because what you see is so talented. But a lot of it's down to how good he's made himself as well. How much better he's made himself and how much he wants to be a main player. And his impact was phenomenal. Like his pace to get past, once he throws that pass to James Lowe, just his even pace to get upfield. We talk about nines, support lines, but they're generally more aerobic. But I know he's only off the bench, but that shows his footballing ability, his work rate to get a second touch, and the second touch it's actually his third touch in the same play because he's the one who gives the pass to Conan, but he just gets the rewards and gets the try. And I thought he was amazing. Him and Conan, in particular, off the bench, were outstanding. Jack was class off the bench, and for Farrell, watching from afar for Easterby, I mean, you're looking at Scotland and you go, right, this game will probably be in the hopper going into the 60th minute. Have we got players who can actually come on and finish this game? And I wouldn't be against keeping the same team and same bench this week because I would treat it like a 2-block, period, and say that if Jack Conan, Dan Sheehan, Jack Crowley are going to start the next game, that wouldn't they benefit from having a week and a half prep like the fellas who started against England had? I'm not saying that they don't know their role or anything like that, but it would just, for me, it would make some sense to have the same group as such, give and take for injuries, come back Furlong, obviously, maybe Joe McCarthy come back in, but not mess around with the starting team too much, but then obviously reward people for hopefully another big performance after Scotland.
Yeah, Jonny, I don't know what your opinion on that is, because I do think it makes sense to run it back as it was in that game, particularly around the forwards, where like as much as we're talking about Dan Sheehan, to Ronan Kelleher's credit, he played very, very well as well. And if it wasn't for Dan Sheehan putting in like an elite performance, you wouldn't even be talking about playing Ronan Kelleher off the bench this weekend. Had an excellent game again. And as Bernard says, if you're coming down into those 20 minutes, where Scotland, in fairness, actually got a lot out of their bench last week as well, it is very tempting to kind of hold back a couple of those players for the final quarter at Murrayfield this weekend again.
Yeah, I struggle with this because maybe it's because I'm a club coach. I'm not an international coach, but I do struggle with it because I always think, are you even in a game if you start with your best team? Like if Dan Sheehan starts the game, are Scotland even in with a shout? You know what I mean? So that's where I struggle with it, and even small things like I obviously I don't always like to point out errors of players. I like to go the other side of it, but I think obviously it's part of the game. But like Ryan Baird for me maybe showed why he doesn't always get a start. He had some moments of what I would have called naivety. He had the line break for the England 10-7, wasn't it? I don't know, did he cause it by rushing or was Prendergast not really aligned to him? Maybe in Leinster he would have been with them. In Ireland maybe he's not, maybe it's a small thing like that, but I thought Ryan Baird got energetic and went upfield and maybe just left his defensive line. He got bumped on one counter attack, I think, and I think he missed a restart. And here I am counting errors, which I don't like doing, but like it's just those things they're intangible. And when you go back and you look at from a coach's eye and you see where there's little cracks appear in your team over time, and had those cracks not appeared, would you even be in the same situation? So I'm using him unfortunately as a way of going. If Conan started and hadn't some of those naive moments, are they naive? I'm not sure. They're errors anyway. But so if you're starting with your best team, if Dan Sheehan has an effort like that in the first half, and you're not, you know, it was a 10-all at halftime, or sorry, 10-7.
10-5 England.
Sorry. Yeah, before Ireland scored. So would you even be in that situation and getting under pressure? So that's where I struggle with. But obviously, you do need to hold back a card at some stage. That if you do get under pressure, if they do kind of give you a lot of energy, that you have to be able to turn it as well and not just hang on and survive. So I always struggle with that. I don't like picking finishers, so to speak. But that's a quirk of selection that people can go through. I like to start with my best team going forward and not have to have that conversation with a fella going, no, I'm mad to bring you off the bench, and they're looking at you square eyes being like, really, are you? I prefer to start the game. So I don't know. It's maybe some coaches like doing that and maybe having the experience of doing it, but I like to go start strong and maybe not be in a game if you can help it at all.
But when you're doing that, do you tell your replacements, oh no, I'm just holding you back for the last 20 minutes because you're going to come on and make the impact?
My management conversations, I'm not sure, but no, you pick the team and you pick the team on merit as far as I'm concerned.
Um, to kind of pick apart maybe a couple of things in the first half that went wrong, like as good as the attack was from deep, and they actually did create a lot, there were in the first half some of those issues from November around kind of failing to execute in the 22, and there were a lot of opportunities in the 22, Bernard, that Ireland left behind them. Um, like would you have much concern around that, particularly around the mall, where I think for a year or so it hasn't been that effective. Like I
Yeah.
was counting back through it last year. I remember ahead of the Fiji game in the Autumn Nation series, Ireland scored a maul try in that match, but that was their first time scoring directly from a maul in 6 games, leading back to the Wales game in the Six Nations, the previous late February, early March. Is is that something they do need to sharpen up?
Yeah, look, they'd be disappointed with that. But I think what was more important, the most important thing for our line out the weekend was to regain confidence that we could actually win quality ball. And obviously 23 out of 23 successful statistically, that's gone a long way to hopefully rebuilding that self-belief that definitely had to be damaged, because there was too many games where we were just a little bit off, or a long way off at certain times. So the reality is, and Ireland would be gutted, because if they kick to the corner, they expect to score. Ideally from the maul, but if not, that where the maul stops, you're in a position where you can actually generate, go forward, and eventually score. And obviously in that first half, we did neither. But something, I was doing a French Wales game. France mauled for more meters than any other team in Tier One, in the Tier One in 2024, but failed to score a maul try. It's incredibly difficult actually to get it over. With people being allowed to creep up the side and not changing the bind. Now a little bit harder now because you can't touch the 9 at the back, so potentially the next phase off it is a little bit easier. But it is difficult, and we didn't have a weight or power advantage over England in up front. Over the course of 80 minutes, our pack outplayed them, but certainly in that area of the game, England were nice and muscular and nice and well organised, and we didn't. For sure, I think for O'Connell and that forward pack, when they're looking at this weekend and the next 4 games, they'll say, look, we need to convert those directly. You know what I mean? We need to convert those directly, because we let England off the hook. And if another area of our game didn't perform, we will be looking back to how can we lose a match with that many entries and a 100% set piece. Well, it's down to us and our inability. So that's the thing for me. I think it is harder, but I also think Ireland probably against everybody else, and even France, if we have a little shift drive, or a little bit more, take a little bit more risk around the ball movement in the air, etc. I think we can score against them, because I think we'll be even better this weekend and after that.
Yeah, and I do think, in fairness, Ireland are probably getting a little bit more creative around what they're doing when they're not
Yeah,
mauling. Like we've seen in
sure.
the last few months, they've got that lovely little wraparound move where Kelleher or Sheehan or Gus McCarthy, or whoever it's going to be, coming around the back. That's been really could have led to another try at the weekend, but there was just a knock on in the end. Moving on to the out halves, Johnny. Uh, you had your column on RT Sports this afternoon or this morning, like you always do on a Tuesday. The headline: Trust the process and trust our fine young out halves. Give us the cliff notes for those who didn't read it.
Um, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes these are driven by what I see and maybe
I'd hope
public,
so.
but sorry, I mean opinions that I see in public opinion on social media. I do see the game myself, but and I see discourse around our tens, and it just probably frustrates me that we have to bash someone to elevate someone else, and I certainly don't think we need to do that because if you take Sam Prendergast on his own merits, he's 22. Is he just 22? Or he'll be
22
22
in a couple of
yeah,
weeks.
he's 22 during the championship. So for a guy of his age to take on England with what they were trying to do to his attack, he had some errors that I'm sure he'll be able to point out before any of us pointed out. Like for example, I spoke about he had two attempted spiral kicks, which normally we see him let fly for 70 meters, like, and just didn't connect to them. I think one minute to touch, and it was probably a 30-meter gain. So it's a normal standard kick, it just didn't fly for 60 meters. So if you're, and then obviously, look, he had his one or two errors. He had a chip kick that he didn't connect like he would like to, but nothing was detrimental. Like there was nothing in his game that was detrimental. I think, I made the comment that if he had stayed on the pitch, Ireland would have won the game. Like, we didn't have to change our 10 to win the game. So I think a lot of what our 21-year-old out half did was very, very positive. And if you can win games like that against England with a 21-year-old with his ceiling, then you're in a really good place. That's like absolutely independent of the fact that Jack Crowley came on and showed a real mature 25-year-old head.
Mm.
And I think it was just the way he went about the game because he had his own errors. Like, he kicked two kicks too long. Again, things that you wouldn't say are an error, but he knows it's too long for a contest. But he got his hands on the ball so much. I think that little soft pass to Mac Hansen when they were in attack just shows like the skill set at the tackle line. I even saw some people, now again, it's like reviews online, like what's their actual opinion worth. But like I saw some people saying, but sure, he doesn't take the ball to the line. And I'm like, watch the match because that's him taking the ball to the tackle line and releasing a pass for a winger to get around, So
and getting hit in the process as well.
yeah, and Jack gets hit repeatedly in every game he plays because he takes the ball to the line all the time and he delays the pass as much as he can. Not unlike Prendergast, who delays his passes too, but he lets them fly as well. So, I think my summary is I think for Jack Crowley to come off the bench 22 minutes and impress the way he did, albeit with other players coming off the bench and impressing and bringing some momentum with them, I do think in his position you'd like to be given a chance to run the week because if he's not being given a chance to run the week after the performance, the maturity, how he responded to being dropped, then you kind of go, well, what am I doing? So I do think he deserves a shot at running the week into Scotland and starting it and leaving Sam have the impact off the bench because they can both do both. So that's where I was with it. But I think the main thing I'm saying is I can say that Jack Crowley played really well, while also saying that Sam Prendergast played pretty well, not as well as he might have done in autumn. But this is a Six Nations against England. Maybe the intensity just rose a small bit. And in the first half, I thought he had a couple of carries and things that he normally doesn't do. He normally just plays other people into the game. So maybe sometimes I think when the intensity gets higher, out halves carry or they do things that aren't part of their normal way of playing. And some execution isn't quite as high as what you'd like it to be. But again, like he played a very positive game. I just think that Jack's impact, you'd like to see him rewarded for that too. And I do always like to qualify this with my natural human bias. Like, I coach Jack. Like it's not any surprise, there's a massive Munster bias. And even at that, I don't want people talking about Jack Crowley because Sam Prendergast didn't spiral the ball or because, he did this wrong and that wrong. Let's just talk about them on their own merits, as opposed to bringing the other fella down.
Well, Jonny, that bias is entirely why I have to keep you and Johnny Murphy on hold over the coming years as well, so we can perfectly balance this thing out week on week. Bernard, like specifically looking at Scotland and what it would require to open them up or to get the better of them, is there anything about Crowley's skill set or Prendergast's skill set that you think might be more suited specifically to this matchup this weekend, rather than, I'm not saying pin your name to a player for the next 10 years here?
Not really. No, I think I'd be very comfortable with either of them starting, to be honest. I think the key is that they are absolutely certain what the coaches want from them, and I think, Johnny asked are we getting the ball wider? Because Sam, obviously, his passing game is a big strength of his. And I think, obviously, yeah, you want to play to that, but I think that's something that Ireland were frustrated with in 2024. And it's all not down to Jack or Sam or whatever, but for some reason we were actually becoming narrower and narrower. And some of that could be down to the way defenses decided to adapt to shut us down, or whatever. But there was definitely a frustration there, which probably led to Sam getting fast tracked. I'm not sure the Scotland are Scotland aren't as bad as England were out wide. You know what I mean? And they're not as soft on the edges as England were. So won't be necessarily as easy to get there.
Yeah.
Which is obviously something that Goodman will have to assess. I think Steve Tandy's done a good job with them defensively, and obviously England are after flip-flopping in terms of how they want to defend. You know, they've gone from the blitz under Felix to the blitz under Joe Alab to a more classical up and out under Joe Alab. And now the problem is for Borthwick is, you know, he's going to have to give that system time. You know what I mean? So he thought the England defended really well in his post-match interview. But it probably isn't too bad considering it's the first game with that system. But the problem is, you know, Steve Tandy has had Scotland for 4 or 5 years, and he's gone from being I think defensively were the best team in the competition at the start to just being a little bit up and down, but yet much more confident. So I'd be the opposite to Jonny. I would leave Sam this week, because I think you have to take into account that it was England. You have to trust your eyes, and that first half, he had some errors, but we were pinned for the first 20 minutes in there, and then a lot of our 22 attack, the fact we didn't score wasn't all down to him either, you know. So I think he had a good game with some errors. I agree, but I would leave him play this week. But I certainly would play Jack, the start Jack the week after, you know, because I think he deserves to get a start. I admire him massively for how he's bounced back from this probably disappointment of not starting against Australia, not playing against Sam over Christmas, and then obviously really proving himself in the last 2 games for Munster in the Champions Cup and off the bench. Like that's exactly what you want, and that was never in doubt. I think Jack Crowley's a hell of a player, and maybe him coming back into the team with the team being a little bit more confident again and flying. Like I don't think we ever regained our confidence properly in 2024 from the World Cup, and obviously replacing Jonny, and obviously, you know, some different personnel coming into the backroom staff. I think 2024, even though it was a great year, we beat South Africa away once and we won a Six Nations, I don't think we hit the heights that we had. Like France had a hangover as well, and obviously our hangover wasn't bad because we were relatively successful. But I think that this team gets up and running again and finds that fluidity and flow. You know, any one of 4 or 5 10s potentially should be able to come in and keep the whole thing going, if that makes sense. Now, and that's not doubting that we have 2 exceptional young 10s in the 2 that were in the matchday squad. But I think the starting point with Ireland actually getting back into the rhythm that we were or we want to be in 2025.
And specifically, Birch, like on the fact that Crowley has hit this form now again in the last 4 or 5 weeks, like if you're Andy Farrell, and I remember the hoo-ha that was around, you know, the damage that this could be doing to Jack Crowley's confidence and stuff like that back in November. If you're Andy Farrell and you're looking at Jack Crowley's form right now, and Sam Prendergast, you know, tipping along, maintaining his form as well, you're sitting back going, this has worked out perfectly, because he got the response he obviously wanted out of Crowley, who, like, you have to admit, wasn't at the top of his game for the first few months of the season.
I think it's phenomenal, and like I remember Jack's first training sessions with Ireland. I'm not sure, was he in as a training player or was he in as the full squad? But within 2 days, the feedback from the management and players were, this fella's different, right? Like he has it. He has an incredible mentality. And unfortunately for Jack, the same stuff was being said about Sam after his first couple of days. You know what I mean? So you waited for 14 years with Sexton, where his personality, his level of knowledge, his ability made it very difficult for people to match him. And and lots of people have come and gone to try and be the successor to him. And now suddenly we have two who, if you listen to the likes of Farrell or Goodman or any of the senior players, the players just love both of them. You know what I mean? They love both of them and want to play with both of them. Like that's how good they both are. And unfortunately, it's created this. And to be honest, though, I think like I was doing some stuff pre-match in the Viva, meeting around the Viva, like meeting lots of people going to the game. Not the average, the majority of Irish rugby fans don't they don't have blinkers on or are happy enough for one or the other. I don't think it's, but obviously on social media, if you believe social media, you believe it's the biggest issue in the world at the moment. You know what I mean? And that the media are picking Sam, or the media have decided that Sam's ceiling is high. You know what I mean? Whereas it's not the media. It's Leo Cullen, it's Jack Nienaber, it's Richie Murphy when he's playing under 20s. You know, it's Gibson Park, but they also believe Jack's ceiling is really high. You know what I mean? It's just what is higher. And you know what? They might not ever be one a dominant player among those two. It may be just who's in form or what game plan the coaches want to play. You know, they could both end up with 100 caps each.
Yeah. And as you said, it's a minority on social media, but the problem is it's a loud minority. And that's how it kind of snowballs.
I have to keep making myself realise that they're not the rugby public as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's also, I think, just that you're not picking someone for the next 10 years, like you're picking them for the next match. I think that's the most important thing here. Like, I know there's people think the writing's on the wall and stuff, but you're literally picking game by game at the moment.
Yeah.
To move it on, another couple of bits around Ireland and then talk about Scotland specifically. But I thought, I don't know, were you watching Against the Head last night, Jonny? Donal Lennon, I thought, summed up the overall day quite well by saying it was a perfect day for Ireland because it wasn't a perfect performance. And obviously the two tries at the end, I found it really interesting in Simon Easterby's press conference after the game where a reporter asked him, did the fact that you gave up those two tries at the end take a little bit away from the overall day, or was he frustrated by it? And he just said, yeah. And there was a silence in the room for about 6 seconds after he said yes. And I don't know how many press conferences you've been in, but a press conference dead air is a really intense dead air until someone eventually pressed him to elaborate on it. So you could see that he was really, really annoyed about giving England those cheap tries. And it, at the very least, it does focus the mind for this next week.
I think with those things, you know, you're always like when I'm coaching and you give it, sometimes you're like, concede there and we'll get out of here. You know, just give it up if you've enough space on the, like, obviously you don't say that out loud, but it's
you've just done it. You've just done it.
But you're like, you know, what's the end of the world? You take this objectively. But I do think he's right. Like, but when you're in that moment, you know, you do start going, you don't give up anything. Like, that's your mindset. You don't give up anything. So that's why you don't say that out loud, because that's weak and you want to stay strong as possible. And
it was probably important just for him in his first day, a very public facing kind of role, and so many people might be getting excited, but it is a way for him to kind of publicly just be, do you know what? Cool the jets. We're not happy yet.
It's setting standards, like, isn't it? And what I was impressed by and what I was, you know, what I liked about him around the game, he was smiling in the coach's box. He was enjoying the fact that they went ahead in the second half. And I think one of the interviews, I don't know which one I watched, but one of them, he was very normal. He was very open, and he reflected really. You know, I don't think he was putting the hammer down in the one that I listened to in terms of like, that's just not good enough. You know, I think he was saying that, you know, there's so much more to go, and it was really exciting. But like, you know, I do think sometimes there's you know, if you got over that too easily, then, you know, the other side of that is also true. Then will you go into Scotland and you think you're too good, like, you know, so it's never serving a bad purpose once you go away and get the win that you needed. Like, I think there was a comment around bonus points and stuff like that, but Ireland got a bonus point win against England in the Aviva, and they're going to go to Scotland next week, and they're mad for road with things that they can work on. Of course, that's a good thing. And I think I was going to go back to a point that Birch was making, and it's only because you did it on Against the Head. I saw the clip of it with the pot of five across and the tip on. I wonder, is that a pot of four? And is that actually wrong? Henderson seems to be on the inside. I'm not sure how much he's offering. We often see Leinster with a pot of four there. Five seems excessive. And then also, I thought your point on the hitting the first post, because then three will fold. It's just the details of that and Andrew Goodman and what he's doing, that it's so impressive, you know. So there's so much in it, but having all of that detail and then having stuff that you have to improve on, being able to go into camp this week and say, lads, that defense is not good enough for the last 10 minutes. You know, nice to be able to use that stick and rev it up again before Scotland.
Yeah, Jonny, just now, I think it should have been a 4. I agree with you. Either Henderson probably the Brook was one with 3 backs. That was the difference. So normally you'd have at least one forward potentially there, or one forward holding with. And I think, but I'd rather they stayed as a 5 rather than lose Conan, if you get me. You know what I mean? Like you could say, oh, the guy at the very end go out wide, but actually, what was good was that Crowley kind of he kept a lot of width as well, and Gibson's Park was able to fly the ball across 3 forwards to Dan Sheehan with Crowley at the back, and then Conan on that hard line. So that was good. Just on Simon, let's not forget he's wearing 2 hats. He's also the defense coach. You know what I mean? So, when I looked at the coach's impact or whatever, I would have said Simon, big tick. You know, first game as head coach, you got a bonus point winning against England. Paulie, 23 out of 23 for the lineouts. Fogs, good scrum against a bigger pack. Goodman, good attacking game. The negatives were obviously the defense eventually, if you take it on tries conceded and the nature of the tries, and that's Simon, and the 2 of those were at the end when the game was won, but he'll still be disappointed with that. And then I think you could probably look at some of our kicking and our high ball work, which I'm not sure who that comes under, but that was probably the reason we struggled a little bit in the first half. And you mentioned it, Jonny, but not taking the kickoff. So Ryan Baird didn't take the kickoff. That effectively, and it sounds ridiculous, but that meant we spent effectively 20 minutes stuck in our own half. You know what I mean? Just that one moment gives the away team a little bit of momentum, and they had a plan. They had a plan then to try and keep us there, which worked. So yeah, it didn't matter against England, but maybe against France it'll be like 1 or 2 key moments which will actually decide the game.
In terms of squad update, we'll find out more from the coaches tomorrow, but Ireland will pick their team on Friday. Yesterday, obviously, we got the news that Tom Hearn and Shane Bolton were called into the squad this week. Notably, there was no tight head prop called in, so it does give you a slight bit of reassurance that they might reckon Finlay Bealham or Tadhg Furlong. One of those could be available this weekend. Bealham went off with what looked like an ankle injury on Saturday afternoon. But, Bernard, if neither of those 2 players are available, the likelihood is Tom Clarkson starts, Jack Ainger is on the bench. From what we've seen from Tom Clarkson so far in his international career, like, obviously it's a big step up. Pierre Schoeman is like probably a Lions loosehead in waiting, but I don't have much fear over Tom Clarkson. He's really, really impressed me in the bit of international rugby he's played.
Yeah, and I don't want this to be taken negative at all, but he is someone that probably surprising players who play with him in terms of as he steps up, it's no problem. You know what I mean?
I would say, sorry to interrupt you, but for me, his international performances have by and large been better than what I've seen him put in with Leinster.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. But I also think Leinster and Ireland have different scrum philosophies. You know, so I think John Fogarty's philosophy is everyone connected, everyone on the same page, scrum square. You know, with not too much movement. And I think you saw the scrum that Donald showed last night, where Genge went after. I mean, Clarkson, he was just he just locked it down. Whereas with Leinster, there's so much movement happening on the left hand side of the scrum, and it kind of makes him have to move with it, and he probably doesn't have the immense physical power yet, or the stature of someone like Slimani, who's so low that they can make hay with that. But yeah, I've been delighted. I think it's amazing the way he stepped up. I wouldn't have any fear about Ainger either. I mean, Ainger's probably a bit better with the ball as in a ball carrier, but I think he's built up enough experience as well. And yeah, and like Tom O'Toole obviously is to come back. So we're starting to build a bit of depth there that we didn't know we had, I think.
And like Jonny, is like as tough as it would be if Furlong and Bealham aren't available this weekend against Scotland, I prefer the idea of giving a player like Clarkson or Ainger an opportunity to play in a big game when they're surrounded by an otherwise first choice team. Like you could really make the argument that a player is going to get a lot more out of that than he would playing in a summer test against a tier two nation with maybe 12 or 13 other people who are relatively inexperienced.
It's a much better opportunity for the player. It's a better reflection of what they're actually about because there's no other changing factors, and it's just them slipped into the team that the other person would have been in. So it's a great place to be. But I think if you were playing Clarkson this weekend, there's often, you go to different games and people say, "Oh, change this person or change that person." Yeah, I will when I know I'm going to win it. It's like it's very hard to do it before you have the result. So for me, like I've said it there about not, I don't know, my giving my negativity away here, but like it's when you don't have the cornerstones of the team like a Tyke Furlong. I'm sure Ireland would much prefer to be going to Murrayfield with Tyke Furlong. When I said like small things matter, and Bernard followed up with it there in terms of the kickoff receipt. Small things matter a lot, and like when you see the game creaking or getting away from you, often it's because someone just made a little bit of an error that another person might not have made, and or when you get into a spot of bother, the leaders, if you want to call it that way, Tyke Furlong has come up with massive moments for Ireland. Like so, if you come under the pressure that Ireland expect to come under in Murrayfield, because they are going to come under pressure. If you expect him under that pressure, you'd want to pick fully, like So we'd like to have Tyke Furlong available, but if Thomas Clarkson is in, then you go back to your conversation. Of course, you have no fear, and off you go and express yourself and go and do it. Because I think there's lovely empowerment within that. But if you had the choice between Tyke Furlong and Thomas Clarkson, you're not going to start Thomas Clarkson. So
Mhm.
it's empowering him because, and sometimes as a coach, it's nice to have that taken out of your hands. If Tyke Furlong is kind of there, but you don't know if he's fully there, sometimes you prefer if someone said he's unavailable and you just get on with it. You pick the next guy, you have full confidence in him. So it's an interesting psychological battle when you're picking a team like that.
Looking at Scotland specifically then this Sunday, 31-19 winners against Italy at the weekend. They had been 14-0 ahead, 19-9 at halftime. Felt like the wheels were actually coming off during the middle third of the game. Finn Russell was having an off day through the intercept, a few loose offloads. Does make me a little bit wary though, Bernard, that I thought Finn Russell had a bad day at the weekend. Um, but then on the flip side, I'm wary of the fact that maybe Finn Russell has got that day out of his system.
Yeah, and I think he probably got a little bit loose because it looked like they were in control as well.
Yeah.
But I actually think it was nearly the perfect prep for Ireland for Scotland because they got what they wanted out of it.
Yeah. And
and yet,
they got themselves into a hole and got themselves out of it.
big time without panicking. And that's not something you'd always say about Scotland. I mean,
12
they've
months ago in
struggled in the
Rome.
past.
12 months ago in
Exactly.
Rome.
Exactly. So they would see that as having matured. Their November wasn't bad at all. Obviously beat Australia. Struggled against South Africa, but that's understandable. So I think they're not in a bad place. Obviously, big question marks around how they'd adapt without Tupolatu. Hugh Jones gets a hat trick. Their attack, like they've got a really exciting back three with Kinghorn, with Darcy Graham and Duan van der Merwe. Not perfect defensively, but attack wise, they're probably. It's hard to say. Like Ireland's is very good as well, but they are one of the better back threes going forward in the competition. Van der Merwe is a machine if he gets an opportunity. So they'll want to fire shots at Ireland. It's interesting. Gregor has kind of pared back a little bit around how attacking minded they want to be, and he's constantly pushing for balance to that. And Finn sometimes follows the game plan to a T, and then other times he goes a little bit off script. But that's probably when he's at his best, And I'm really excited. Like I love seeing what he can do. Don't really like it when he's playing against an Irish teams, but he is a very creative player. And Simon Easterby with his defense coach hat will be stressed because he knows that he can put people into holes that others can't.
Yeah, and like you just saw how Darcy Graham, when they were struggling, just put the team on his back, makes that
Yeah.
break, sets up Hugh Jones for that try. On the other side of the ball, then Jonny, Bernard spoke about their defense a little bit earlier on, and it's probably it's worth pointing out that Scotland's defence probably isn't as aggressive as England's was at the weekend, but from watching them over the years, and like particularly last year at the Aviva Stadium as well, they're very good at making their tackles, which is not something you could actually say about England at the weekend. They were slipping off all over the place. I don't think Ireland are actually going to have that luxury against Scotland.
No, and sometimes that's because of the lack of aggressive nature in the defensive
Yeah,
line.
like they're more prepared to make the tackle.
Sometimes you look at teams and you're prepping for them and you're like, there's nothing that stands out here. We just have to go through phases. They probably feel like one of those teams, but at the same time, they don't have, if you look like a Ringrose or something, like you don't really pick someone out of Scotland saying, geez, they're going to lead the line or they're going to get them out of a hole, with their wingers and the way they are. They're very attacking minded. Finn Russell obviously has a 10, like, but he's very attacking minded. They have a very attacking minded kind of set of individuals. So like it doesn't really translate into their defense as much, I would say. But they're still going to make it really hard because they're going to be at home and they're going to be passionate about it. They like to get after Ireland, so it's not going to be easy. But at times when Italy, I like Italy's attack. Whether it always fires or not, I like what they're trying to do, and they cause them trouble. And they're hitting holes and Scotland not hitting the right man. And if any team can cause them more trouble with that, with a bit of power backing that up, Ireland will obviously cause that some trouble too. But so I think it's one of those games where I think the Ireland coaches and Easterby setting out his narrative for the week will say something like, we won't have trouble scoring if we get ourselves right. It's the other side of the ball. And like they're a kind of a team that when you preview them as a head coach, you'd be going, Jesus, if the game is in the balance, Van der Merwe is going to pull off something. He's going to get 2 tries. Darcy Graham on the other side can do that. And Finn Russell, you just cannot relax in one of those games, which is really frustrating because it's hard to enjoy because you might think that you have him under wraps for 60 minutes and all of a sudden a wonder pass from Finn Russell, a Van der Merwe counter attack, and someone just misses a one-on-one on him, and you're like, Jesus, we're back in the game here. So like they're probably a really frustrating team to preview and go into to play against. The one thing I didn't see all of the game, but I saw a lot of it, and I was kind of surprised by Finn Russell. There was a moment around the 5th minute, I think, when Rory Darge actually scored. Finn Russell missed a front door option from Van der Merwe, and I was like, Jesus, he'd never missed one of them in his life, I'd say. It just didn't. It's not his decision making at all. Like, so you're right. I didn't think, and he had a flick out the back door that no one was on the same page as him on, and it just didn't seem like him. But I'm like you, I'd fear that because maybe it was Italy, it was the start of the Six Nations excitement, and they wanted to go and express themselves, but they will think about Ireland so differently, and you take those bits and pieces out of your game, I would think, and likewise to your question, I suppose the defensive side comes up another notch as well. They don't miss as many tackles or they don't leave a gap, and I think there will be a lot of breaking down in them.
One other element of their game, Burner, then around the breakdown, like when you consider how much trouble Tom Curry was causing Ireland in that first half around the breakdown, Rory Darge is someone Ireland have to be incredibly wary of this weekend.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's getting better every season. He's very athletic, and he will go after us. I think I expect our breakdown to be good and accurate against Scotland. Obviously, we have to be because they present a danger there, and Tandy is very sharp around when they go after the breakdown, when they go for jackal turnovers and not, and their back row in general are decent. I don't think they're the same ball carrying capacity as ours in any way, but they're good operators. They're very honest. Xander Fagerson his work rate's phenomenal at the moment. So the Packer,
form of his life, yeah.
Form of his life. Yeah, the Packer good. You just think this Ireland pack, like, I wouldn't swap many of the Scottish forwards for Irish forwards, and I'd like to think that again. We spoke about the areas of Ireland again that went well and didn't. Yeah, the breakdown. Curry did have a big influence on us, and Paul will be very keen to make sure we're a lot better there in that area.
Mm-hmm. I'm not doing a Lions watch this week, but I did see it. I did see it pointed out by one of the BBC podcasts that if you think about all the top quality sevens we've seen, Van der Fleer, Tom Curry, Rory Darge, Jack Morgan, then as well it was like probably one of the very few shining lights for Wales. You can't actually see all 4 of those, or even 3 of those 4 maybe going on the Lions tour just as a sheer numbers game. It's kind of remarkable when you think about it. Like,
yeah, and you've Sam Underhill as well, who's injured, who on his day can be top class. No, it's crazy. I wonder how many would he bring, but he just bring 1.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then bring obviously someone like Doris. Obviously, he's played 7. Not saying that you would want to take him out of 8, but
Mm.
yeah, only 2 max will go of that bunch,
Mm.
and any other year, Lions year, they all could be test lines. Like that's how good it is at the moment. And the open side position was under threat for a while when everyone was obsessed with having a back 5 who could all be line-out options.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the current trend is no, you need a tearaway.
But I
Right.
had something similar when you were talking about loose heads because I think they'll probably all go anyway. But when you're talking about Pierre Schumann and then you've
Porter.
Alex Genge and Porter, like some power in those 3 loose heads.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's Lions chat for the week done. Couple of tiny little bits to wrap up. Just in small points. Italy at home to Wales this weekend is actually kind of shaping up to be a cracker of a game and a really really intense occasion. Johnny, like I can't expect Italy will ever go into a Six Nations game being bigger favourites, and obviously that brings a pressure that they wouldn't be used to.
Yeah, it does, but they're obviously very difficult to play against over there, and they do have to get to a stage where they're expecting to be favourites and
Mm.
get past that and go and win a game. But Wales are just, when Dan Bigger says this is one of the biggest games in I don't know what he said, 15 or 20 years. You go, Jesus, that's depressing. Like that's
Mm.
going to Italy before was to get your bonus point, or maybe it wasn't a bonus point thing, but get your rotations in. I don't think you're going to Italy at the moment to bring many in rotation. So yeah, if Italy can, obviously it's modeled very heavily through Benetton as well. Like, and if they can get their attacking game right and put Wales under pressure, the panic that will ensue through Wales because they didn't bring much in terms of scoring against France. I know there's been a lot of chat around that, passive on the kind of front door on the tackle line and a very lateral in behind that. That's probably going to happen when they're facing France away from home in the opening game of the Six Nations. Like, I don't think that's representative of what they're going to do for the rest of the tournament. Obviously, there was just an imbalance of power. But if they don't find someone who's going to put them on the front foot, Italy will, and it'll be a long day for them.
Mm-hmm. Bernard, how do you see that going?
Yeah,
Can you can,
I think
can you see it? Can you see Wales winning?
very hard. I think it is the biggest week of Gatlin's coaching career because I think if they lose to Italy, it'll be another wooden spoon, and it'll be very hard for them to stay in situ. If they beat Italy and show a little bit of gradual improvement, even though I don't think that they're good enough to beat the others, he may survive and get a chance to go on a summer tour and bring through another generation. So I think it's absolutely massive. I thought Wales put in a decent shift. I think they left it all out there and still got beaten 43-0. You know what I mean? And I think they can go to the well again this week, and they're going down to Nice for a training camp, and they're away from all the negativity of Wales at the moment, and they'll try and build towards that. But Italy deservedly favourites, and Simon Raoului, the Fijian, I got to know him quite well. He worked with Gonzalo Quesada at Stade Francais and at Biarritz, and he said he's very Latin-like in his mindset. He's very, methodical, doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. And that's probably exactly what Italy need. They need someone who has a good understanding of the tactical requirements, but also is able to being a little bit more process driven and they seem to be reacting well under him. And I think they will be absolutely gutted if they don't beat Wales this weekend. I mean, this is prime opportunity for them to show their, I suppose, to double down on the improvement that we think is there. But if to lose to Wales would blow all that. So there is pressure on him, but I expect him to be good enough to do it. Also, Watkins is out. It sounds like Wainwright is out. An already weak squad look weaker. What would Gatlin do at 10? Like Ben Thomas, he plays most of his game. He plays most of his rugby in the centre for Cardiff. Like it's a mad selection when you see Garrett Anscombe doing quite well for Gloucester. And I know Gatlin wants to think long term, but that's certainly for me as a match or a Six Nations where short term at halfback will actually help you be there for the long term.
Yeah, and like that argument doesn't necessarily stack up. Like how long term a selection is Liam Williams at the moment,
Yeah,
and there are
for
other
sure.
players in that team as well. Bernard obviously mentioned the scoreline 43-0, Johnny. The worrying part of it all, and what reflects well on France, is that they won 43-0, pulling up with half an hour to go. Barely left third gear, brought Antoine Dupont and a handful of others off before the 50-minute mark.
Literally a handful, and maybe more than a handful. They had 6 subs at one stage, was it? And very early in the second half, and That's what I was looking at it going, like, why are Wales so bad? Like, how are they that bad? Because it's not really obvious to you, but is it just a personnel thing? Is it your halfbacks or, an inexperienced 10? But I was watching it going, like, this is like Josh Adams, Liam Williams. There are some good players sprinkled in their team, but is it just what has happened, in the regions with their selection with English teams, and do they just not have most of their powers back in their country? And then even at that, you're going, how are they so poor? They were chronic, and France really good. I understand that, but like when you're watching it, you're going like they play the same shape as anyone else. They can't be that bad. Is it just someone not punching through, someone not getting over the gain line, not getting continuity in their play? And France obviously just exacerbated the whole thing on round one. But like Bernard, I'd like I'm going to be interviewer here. What do you think? Like, is it just personnel? Is it like how are they
Yeah,
struggling?
to be honest, it's personnel, but also like they're better than that as players, but their confidence is at a rock bottom. Like they did want to keep the ball, and obviously Rob Howley stepped back up to be the main head coach post that review. But like everything was so deep, Jonny. Like they were nearly afraid to play the tip on even, and it just was meat and drink to a Sean Edwards defense who only gave away 3 penalties. Like they never got stressed. France never really got stressed by what Wales were doing. The whole negativity, like these players have been through so much. They've been through project resets, pay cuts, 4 into 3, lack of uncertain or lack of clarity around coach, not lack of belief in the board of WRU. Like, and also Gatlin, to be fair to him and to be critical of him, he didn't help himself. I mean, they had a review of their training and the high performance setup, which is obviously him, and the players were interviewed, and some of the feedback on that was negative towards the environment and the coaching, etc. And as soon as Gatlin's first press conference, I think, post getting that report, he basically said, do any of those players have the experience or level of intelligence to actually question my environment? You know what I mean? Like, sorry, I think it was, yeah, effectively that's what he meant, but he basically said, do I even know what a high performing environment is? You know what I mean? And again, if you're a player there and you're going, okay, we've kind of given feedback, just keep it in house. You know what I mean? Keep it within our 4 walls rather than go out to the media and kind of give us another kick. And actually, if you notice this week, he's been very positive about the game, and he obviously knows he needs the players. So it's going to be some week for them to get a win against Italy. That's how low Welsh rugby's dropped.
Final question. What suspension is Roman Ntamack getting? Are we going for the classic 6 weeks down to 3, another one off for tackle school?
Yeah,
and he's back for the Aviva?
Yeah, I think so. He'll miss the Toulouse game and he'll miss this weekend against England. In my opinion, it'll be 2 weeks because of tackle school.
Yeah, I think that's what he will get. But geez, he'll be a lucky boy, because you could make an argument that should be in the higher entry point, because he left a lot in that.
Yeah.
What's the point? I think we've said this before. What is the point if he gets 6 down to 3 -1? What is the point? Like, why do we bother? Like, I'd be really strong on that. And I said it to you there a while ago that I thought from the wide view, oh, there was nothing in that. And then they went to the close view, and there obviously is. And I'd be a big fan of Roman Ntamack. We want the superstars playing the game, but not when they're doing things like that. But what is the point if we go 6 down to 2?
My favorite part of that process is when you see in the ruling of the hearing that that the player accepted the charge. Like you're being given credit for admitting to doing something that millions of people have seen you do on TV. Like, I mean,
The load of cameras and replays and every angle. You can't
yeah,
get
that
away.
was me. I was wearing number 10. Right. That's probably where we'll leave it. Ireland playing on Sunday, so that means big round of AIL on the weekend, Jonny. You've got Armagh. Nice little run going at the moment. 5 wins in a row.
Nice run going, yeah. It can all come crumbling down to one result in this league. Unfortunately, it's too tight. But yeah, we are in a good run, feeling good about things. But there's 6 games left, so it's another kind of a kick on now for the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed. I'm flying to Scotland Saturday morning, so I'm going to miss the Terranure and Mary's big day at Lakelands. I'd say it's there's going to be some attendance there. There's 600 in for the lunch already, I believe. There's going to be a huge marquee in. So
it's all very easy for you up there, isn't it? It's self.
look, from small acorns and all that. But listen, thanks a million, lads. It's been great. A reminder: Scotland-Ireland in the Guinness Six Nations on Sunday. Live coverage from 2 p.m. on RT2 and RT Player. And you can also hear the commentary on Sunday Sport on RT Radio 1. And the under-20s, Scotland against Ireland in the under-26 Nations. That is also on RT2 and RT Player from Saturday, 7:30 p.m. We'll speak to you again soon.